Welcome back. The second hour begins here on Breakfast Central. Let's start off by telling you that an unprecedented move by an erudite Nigerian is set to occur as Professor of Political Economics. Professor Pat Utomi plans to mobilize 7.2 million Nigerians to Abuja in a campaign against the political elite. I'm sure you will be wondering, what is this mobilization? Well, Freedom Converge, as it is called, is said to be aimed at reclaiming Nigeria from entrenched systems of state capture and self-serving leadership. But what does this mean for the future of our nation? Well, what is this also going to mean, especially if it's going to be yet another protest without results? Anyway, joining us for this discussion, we do have Professor Pat Utomi himself, leader of this proposed Freedom Coverage. Thank you so much for indeed being here. And thank you for buying our time to speak with us on the plans. 7.2 million Nigerians. What's the context behind this? And a lot of Nigerians are wondering where and why is this coming now?
Well, you see, many years ago, I had the privilege of sharing a platform with a very remarkable gentleman called Stephen R. Covey. Stephen R. Covey had written a number of remarkable books on personal effectiveness, most famous of which was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Before Covey died, he authored a book titled The 8th Habit. And he said this habit would probably be the most important habit of the 21st century. And he says it's about helping people find their voice. The Nigerian people are shell-shocked by where the political class has brought it to. They have even lost their voice. In groups, they have lost their voices. I tell you a remarkable thing that happened 2 days ago to me, and I am still trying to figure it out. I got a call from Aberdeen in Scotland. A gentleman I've spoken to a few times, works for one of the oil companies, and he was crying like a baby. And I thought, oh my goodness, what is this? And I said, what happened? Who did you lose? Because he's from Edo State, I figured maybe there was some kidnapping or something. And he says, so is this how my country will die? This is how Nigeria ends, eh? I said, what do you mean? He said, look at it. Is it not over? Is Nigeria not finished? And I thought to myself, my goodness, a person of this, and he's at least 50 years old. A funeral deck for Nigeria, but it's over. I said, no. There are many people hurting in Nigeria who don't know how to express themselves. And I thought, look, this is really a tragedy, and a great service can be done by helping people find their voice. Today, we have Nigerians who are aching from killings in their neighborhood. Nigeria, somebody said, Bishop Cooker said, Nigeria has become a morgue. Killing fields, everybody, you just look expecting to be, As somebody I spoke to yesterday night, a prominent person, I can't, it would be fair to mention his name, and he's in Abuja. He had to go to a meeting in Enugu, and he couldn't get the flight into Enugu this morning. I'm sure he would have left, so, for whatever reasons of flight challenges. And he bought a ticket to fly to Port Harcourt. And I said to him, between Abuja and Enugu and Port Harcourt and Enugu, difference is marginal. Why didn't you drive? He said, drive from Abuja to Enugu is taking a chance with life. Between Port Harcourt and Enugu is a little better. How can we live like that? Insecurity all over the place. And before you even start talking, the partisan, the greatest damage people have done to Nigeria is this extreme partisanship without thoughtfulness. They'll start insulting you. We know the country isn't working, but they would tell you that everything is, going like it's never gone well before, you know, then you turn to the economy. I mean, people are hungry. They're trying to express themselves. Then a musician sings a song, you know, saying a big power and whatever, and you ban his song. This is authoritarianism of the worst order. People can't seem to be able to express themselves. And we thought, okay, let's help people find their voice.
All right, you've given us a context as to what has inspired this, which is the sentiment that a number of Nigerians have expressed. The fact that, you know, what they ordered is not really what they got. It's what we hear Nigerians say in terms of hunger, criticism of dissenting voices. Now, what shape and form is this protest going to take? Is it going to be a physical protest? And are you concerned about the possibility of a pushback? Because many have said that the government of the day isn't particularly excited about dissenting voices.
Yes, because they don't want people's voices to be raised. And that is why Nigerians have to take back their country. You know, the bishop, the Catholic bishop of Nsukka, Bishop Honor, is known for a particular homily in which he says, you know, a country that the leaders don't fear their people is as good as dead. And that is true. The political class now has complete and total contempt for the Nigerian people. Democracy is supposed to be our people raising their voices. Even under military rule, when I was a younger person, 50 years ago, as undergraduates, sometimes things will be happening and they're still ongoing, and we're on the streets demonstrating, to find that Nigerians can't even think out of fear. Soldiers didn't shoot Nigerians the way civilians are shooting Nigerians for wanting to express themselves. Something has gone fundamentally wrong with that democracy. It cannot be called a democracy anymore. And so we need to make it democracy. We need to begin to express ourselves and to make sure, to let the people be sure that they are the bosses. They own the country. Agents cannot become the people who own the place. And so an expression that is loud, that the world can hear, of the voice of the Nigerian people, that enough is enough, is a critical one if the process is to remain democratic. And so we have chosen to get together to express ourselves. It is not just one protest. It is a process. I mean, the demonstration itself, or the Converge on Abuja, the process will take nearly 1 month. It started now already. We're looking at about the 1st of December. And between now and then, activity moving towards that will be taking place all across Nigeria. Now, a week or two before the actual conversion on Abuja, we'll be having concerts, colloquia, all kinds of programs of enlightenment of people about their rights and freedom will be taking place, just the way the Martin Luther King and co march on Washington in 1964 took place. We will have activities in Maiduguri, activities in Sokoto, activities in Yenagoa, activities in Asaba, in Ado-Ekiti, and then progressively in convoys, in trailers, the people will start moving towards Abuja and Converge, all in green, white, green. If you look down from a satellite as the crowd moves towards Abuja, you will have a spectacle the world will remember of green, white, and green coming in from every angle into the city of Abuja. And this is what we plan to do. And don't say that we're going to try to stop us. We have a right as citizens to protest. They try to stop us. Somebody may stop them. Let them be sure of that.
And do you intend to give notice? Remember that with the End Bad Governance protest, they were required. They had asked for notice as to where they should converge, and they were given, you know, a streamline of how the protest should happen. Do you intend to do that with this protest?
This is notice I'm giving right now, that we're coming from every corner of Nigeria into Abuja and expecting to arrive about December 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. The movement will start 2 weeks or so before that, and the movement will continue until we get to Abuja. If they try to stop, people will get there the way Natasha Akbuchi got to Kogi. But get there, we will.
Okay, you mentioned, do you have a date to this? I mean, and my colleague just rightly mentioned that, have you gotten the approval of the police? Because...
Who are they? Who are they to approve? Who are they? We are the citizens. Who are they to approve? I don't understand what kind of democracy you're talking about. Gotten approval. Who? People who demonstrated with me a few years ago are asking me for their approval for us to do what they and I did before. Who are they?
Now, Professor Utomi, away from the political class, you've been very vocal about the deeper crisis of elite in Nigeria. Can you break this down for us? And what exactly does this elite crisis look like? And how does it perpetrate bad governance?
An elite that cannot centralize the need of the people, cannot centralize institution building, but is so hopelessly committed to extracting rent for themselves, cannot really be called an elite. And so in a sense, talk about elite in Nigeria is a misnomer, because this is not an elite. This is really a rent-gorging, parasitic class. A class that is an elite looks at the long-term good of its people and plans to get there. I have given continuous examples comparing us with our peers. I give the example, I was in a lecture a couple of days ago by a friend of mine who was researching in Indonesia about the same time as I was back in the 90s, and eventually wrote a book. He's a professor at Johns Hopkins University, Professor Peter Lewis. Peter wrote a book titled Growing Apart. And Growing Apart is a comparison of Nigeria and Indonesia. You could see systematically how the elite of Indonesia, in very similar circumstances, and that's why Indonesia is called Nigeria's development twin. The elite of Indonesia, in the face of the impact of oil, because it's an oil-producing country too, huge population like Nigeria, spread on thousands of islands in this archipelago, were able to build an economy that kept waxing stronger and stronger and better life for their people. In the early 60s, people used to say to Indonesians, we wish you guys could be like Nigeria. By the 1980s and 90s, they were saying, Nigerians wish you could be like Indonesians. The failure of Nigeria is the failure of elite. And Indonesia-Nigeria comparison is one example. And you can go from place to place. Just yesterday night, I was speaking with some people who were looking at some points like Dubai, that all the money spent to bring Dubai to where it was is like 10% of the money Nigeria earned from oil. We can't see anything in Nigeria. We go to Dubai to witness the spectacle. So there is a real fundamental crisis of elite. An elite that does not have a sense of shame to recognize, my goodness, we've not done right by our people. That cannot be called an elite. And this is what we're dealing with in Nigeria. The consciousness that this rent-seeking class has to deal with, to understand the damage they have done to their country. Look at the cost of running government. Compare it to any normal country that is making progress. I mean, look at what it takes us to keep a national assembly going. We don't need it. We don't need a national assembly. It does not add value that can justify what we are. So we have to return to a citizen legislature, part-time national assembly, We have to return to the parliamentary kind of system where people are holding government accountable. The agency function is played out in the House literally every day. A prime minister, whoever is at question time, people are asking. But today's leaders in Nigeria are not accountable. Who are you? You have to go and beg them.
Oh,
Not them say to you, look, this is an account for what our stewardship. You know?
Yeah,
So
Professor,
there are fundamental problems Nigerian people need to voice out and put on the table and say to the political class, enough is enough.
Oh,
Otherwise,
Professor,
we took over this building. It is our building.
well, I mean, just like you've mentioned, we're aware of this campaign that you're putting together. But it seems like the campaign is coming at a rather different time for the political elites that you want to speak to through the process, because I'm sure you're aware of the cross-carpeting that is taking place now, especially from Delta State. There seems to be movement of political stalwarts, political juggernauts moving from one place to the other. And this is all, you know, many have said it's a plan towards 2027. First of all, how do you see the movements from the political elite that you want to address? And do you think that this campaign will in any way, you know, situate or hold water in terms of what you plan to achieve? Because they seem to be busy already thinking about 2027.
You've just made my point. They are not a serious political class. You know, if this is all that they are spending their time doing. Democracy is about contestation of ideas, rational public conversations, as Jürgen Habermas, the philosopher of the public sphere, would put it. Contestation of ideas rationally put together. But in Nigeria, where of people, you know, if you steal enough, you must join the APC so that you will not go to jail. You know, how can you have a country like that and people can continue to breathe in it? It's you know, the place stinks. Many years ago, Malaysia, in their drive to get to where they are, found a mantra. Mahathir Mohamad found a mantra that Lyndon Baines Johnson had left. He says, it's better for everybody to be inside the house, pissing out. That's some people to be outside the house, pissing in, because the house will stink like crazy. And Nigeria's house stinks. How can you have a political class? People are saying, look, you've not delivered for the people. And all you're doing is trying to rush into where you won't go to jail for stealing. And so you're all entering one house.
So
everybody's getting in there.
Just to get context of what you just said, sir, are you saying that you believe that, in particular, the former governor of Delta State, His Excellency Ifeanyi Okowa, has moved to the APC because he is trying to evade EFCC arrest and, you know, evade the whole judicial process? Is that what you're saying?
I don't care what he's trying to do, but what I know is that one of them has said, look, if you want to get away from going to jail, better join us in APC. That's on record very clearly. And we know what has happened, that many who have joined have been spared prosecution. So if you are a logical thinker, you can infer as you desire. This is what people are thinking.
All right. So now, still talking about this protest, and you know, you've said it's going to last from now up until the 1st of December, and that there'll be activities during that period. What shape or what form is it going to be? An organic protest? Is it, or do you have a plan already in the way in which you're going to mobilize people to be a part of the protest? And do you think that Nigerians are really in the state of mind to come out for a protest? Because judging from the major last two protests we had, the End Bad Governance protest, the NSAS protest, many would argue that they're starting to lose the zeal and the steam to be able to stand as a dissenting voice. So do you think that Nigerians still have the energy or the excitement to show up for a protest?
Well, if they don't, it means that they have decided they want to be slaves. And slavery, at least, is not my portion. Let me stand up and die saying I will not be a slave. Look, there's a a beach on the east coast of the United States where during slavery it was famously known, a group of slaves from Nigeria were landed and they did not want the humiliation of slavery. And they all decided that they would drown themselves rather than be slaves. And they walked into the water in their hundreds, perhaps even thousands, and just drowned. There are people who are ready to drown rather than be slaves. And Nigeria is moving to becoming a slave post where people cannot express themselves, where life is worse than brutish in the John Locke sense, in the Hobbesian sense of the state of nature. And so if this is the life, then there are people who will say, I dare not to be taken in as a slave. And this is what will galvanize the people who are hurting so badly from all kinds of things. It's a signaling that the politics that Nigeria plays today is not acceptable to many Nigerians. And by the way, this is a movement that has a very strong diaspora base, so that you will have a march on Washington, a march on London, a march on Frankfurt, and some other places. It will take on a life of its own, but we already have people organizing in these places who will carry out that march before even the march on Abuja, which is the climax. And we are enrolling diaspora types who want to come in their thousands to join the protests in Nigeria because they hurt from how Nigeria is running.
Now, Professor Utomi, you were unsparing in your criticism of the media, accusing it of being captured and complicit. But here you are speaking to us freely, being critical of the government. What do you think a true and free, independent media in Nigeria should look like, and what role do they play?
You know why it's difficult to throw these kind of things and think you can intimidate me? When I was much younger than you, I was active in the media, so I know what we used to do. Go back and check what age I edited New Breed magazine, which was one of the first news magazines in Nigeria in the 70s. We knew what we did as young men, as 21-year-olds in the media. And today, we see bourgeois journalism. Everybody's a columnist, everybody's in cahoots with somebody. Well, of course, there are good people still in the media, quite a number. But you have to have glittering generalities, as they say in advertising, to make a point that the media isn't what it used to be. In fact, those who were the ones who stirred up the media back then, today, they are the ones who are the biggest in cahoots. Maybe old age has hit them and they're looking for the comforts before they die. Well, some of us are ready to die the way we came, in struggle. The point is that we used to talk about developmental journalism. We used to talk about the obligation of the fourth estate of the realm. Yes, there are people who are still struggling to leave the space open. But look at how the media has not fought back. The way they are abusing NBC, Nigerian Broadcasting Commission, to stifle the voice of the people. All of these things, in our time, students would have been on the streets. But what has happened? They've destroyed the student movement. We used to be student leaders.
What can the media do differently, Prof?
Sorry?
What can the media do differently to be responsive to the people?
Yeah. I mean, you can do more. That is the point. Showing how voices are being stifled in society today. You can do more holding government accountable. I give one simple example. Look, in my time, if there was the kind of level of hunger, desperation in the land, and we hear, and in that my time, there was a young army officer called Obasanjo, who was head of state. And oil prices went down a notch or two. And he said, look, Nigeria must go down to cutting his coat according to his cloth, not according to its size. He came down as head of state to Peugeot 504 as the official state car. And of course, everybody in government went from there down. And we see ourselves in a time when things are so bad, people are dying, hungry. And people say, in journalism, Nigerian journalists say, look, government needs to buy a befitting new jet for the president, or a yacht. The president is befitting. And when I hear stuff like that, I know that the soul of our country is gone. Because you couldn't dare do that in 1975, 76, 77, and students won't be on the streets, and journalists won't be writing for help to high waters to come down. But they're getting away with it today. And the media is, pussyfooting around and saying, well, befitting. What befitting what? Everybody just collapsed under the new authoritarianism, under a moving fascist machine. Let us be careful how history will judge us. I beg all of us, let us be careful, because history will indeed judge us.
All right, Professor Utomi, just to wrap up with my question for you this morning. You did hear what a former presidential aspirant and, of course, a pastor talking about Tunde Bakare, what he said just over a few days ago, talking about the current administration. He did mention a few things and then called on the president not to play God. Following that, other Nigerians have also spoken out. We did see the former vice president, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, who also spoke up and said there's a lot going on within Nigeria's current economic and political state. I want to ask you in particular, what do you make of the current judiciary in Nigeria? What do you make of the judiciary? What do you also make of the 10th Assembly as well?
The 10th Assembly is a non-assembly. I can tell you that. You can just write it off. The 10th Assembly did not happen. It was a national disaster. But that is it. I hope I'll have the grace and the time to write a book on the 10th Assembly. But it has been a disgrace. If you go back to what some national assemblies have done, and Pastor Bakare pointed out examples of National Assembly in Nigeria historically. Look, at this time when there are so many challenges in our country, the 10th Assembly should have been in exhaustive conversations about the problems of legislation that can end all these insecurity, the terrorist state, people, private members' bills about state policing, community policing, and all of those. No, 10th Assembly doesn't have any time for that kind of thing. They have time for their own welfare. That's all they think about. And so Pastor Bakare was very right. The judiciary, oh, my heart bleeds, my heart bleeds, my heart bleeds. Look, most of the writing on how countries make progress focus on institutions and institution building. I've given this example so many times, but it won't hurt to mention it again. I came to Nigeria in October, and as I was returning, the morning I arrived at Washington, the Nobel Committee announced the winners of the 2024 Nobel Prize in Economics. And they were James Robinson, Darren Acemoglu, and Johnson. And CNN was interviewing Robinson. And Robinson made the point that we make about institutions, and that's my area. That's institutions and economic performance is the area that I've done most of my academic work. And he, in making the points, he says, look, today, how countries make progress is really not rocket science anymore. You can show how it happens. And there are countries that know what it takes to make progress, but they choose for some reason not to, and named Nigeria as an example. It's been yonks since we started saying, look, part of the reason Nigerian economy is not growing is the Nigerian judiciary. Because anybody who looks at the kind of judgments that come out of the Nigerian judicial area will not seriously invest in Nigeria. This is not something that started last week. That's why I say we have a crisis of elite. You can blame Bola Tinubu for some things, but it's a bigger, broader problem. A crisis of elite. A judiciary failed us so badly. When we have institutions that can't work, like, you see, the electoral process doesn't work anymore. Nigerians don't trust INEC. And part of the reason they don't trust INEC is that INEC has passed the buck of deciding who wins an election to the judiciary. And people know what goes on in the judiciary and have lost confidence in it. Lawyers are the first people. By the way, Pastor Bakare, in his comments, quoted Bastiat, who I often refer to, his 1849 monograph, The Law, speaks so boldly about institution building, the role of the law in economic advance. Bastiat was a laissez-faire speaker. Pastor Bakare talked about his formal role, but his bigger contribution was his contribution to thought about the institutions and economic performance and the role of the law. And the law in Nigeria has been very badly managed. I tell lawyers, I pushed a number of lawyers to start years ago what was called Lawyers Interested in Free and Fair Elections Live, showing them example of what their colleagues, even in Pakistan, where they've had so much trouble, have done. When the Chief Justice of the country was bullied by the executive branch, lawyers marched on the streets in Karachi until government reversed itself. But our bourgeois law practitioners have watched the law become an object of, well, sorry to say, disdain. And I don't speak to this thinking that I am some isolated fellow. I've had NBA chairmen, because I've been invited very frequently to NBA affairs to come and comment. And I've had NBA chairmen basically dismiss the Nigerian judiciary, not once, not twice. How can we have a situation where even lawyers are dismissive of the judiciary and a judge still has the sense of presence to go and sit? That's it.
I certainly know that the NBA, especially the NBA conference this year, would have a number of issues they will need to deliberate on in terms of the role that the lawyers play in ensuring that they uphold our democracy. Professor Pat Utomi, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for your time.
I'm glad that I've been able to.